on the
32
graphics one up.
/64.
I mean, a third company entered the market, which we can kind of briefly go over, but this is more of a Nintendo.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about the other things another time.
Exactly.
Let's talk exclusively Sega Nintendo.
At the time,
we're talking Sega
at the time,
64.
But we'll say this much, at the time, Sony did not look like a threat. It was a new name on the market, and they were probably, Sega and Nintendo probably just laughed it off and thought, oh, these guys, they're new, we've got the franchises.
Well, we all know how that story and Sony fucked
Exactly. But Sega and Nintendo had such strong identities. They had grown apart more than ever at this point.
Well, Sega really fucked it up at this point.
Oh, yeah.
That's not to say that the console's bad or the games are bad, and I think
we can't give Sega a handicap saying we can only have the verses up to a certain point. It has to be
I'm not going to say
N64's full lifespan versus the Saturn.
Exactly.
I know it's tricky and it's harder, but
I'm not going to
gives them the unfair advantage. But it's true. I mean,
well, to me, it's still a very close call, and that probably is going to sound like a surprise because the N64 is one of those.
I remember you once saying it was the pinnacle of Nintendo. I don't know if you still have that opinion, but it's
I probably still agree with that. I'll explain why.
Okay.
So
this is going to be
I
very
think Nintendo are a company that benefited from being at the forefront of gaming when it was developing. So the NES was amazing and had so many amazing games because it was in that space where it was all new. And Nintendo were just perfect for that. The N64 was at the forefront of gaming going 3D, and I think just Nintendo upped their game for that sort of stuff.
One game
it's hard to say why.
Kind of pushed it. SNES didn't have many 3D-ish kind of games.
Well,
we didn't bring up Starwing.
No,
which was one of those games.
Because it's a game that I don't think plays that well today. But that might offend people.
The thing is about that
is Star Fox, I assume.
It led.
Well, I can't remember. What's it called? Starwing on the SNES?
I think it's called Starwing.
I was never that keen even back in the day.
But the thing about that, neither am I. But the thing is, it led to Lilac Wars, Star Fox 64, which is one of my favourite Nintendo 64 games. It just showed off the graphics. The new Rumble Pack had just came out, and
for me,
it was just a great memory.
64 just had all these awesome games that were because of the 3D jump. Nintendo just handled it perfectly. Like Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, are the obvious examples, as they were on the NES of absolutely game-changing, defining a genre in 3 dimensions.
Oh, sure.
So that's what they did, and then everything else that they did was just... I mean, I think when you talk about the N64, you talk about Rare, because Rare is exactly the N64 library is nothing without Rare. Not nothing, there's good games, obviously, as Mario Zelda, but Rare is the big picture here.
Rare adds
Donkey Kong, Banjo,
Conker,
GoldenEye.
Diddy Kong Racing. I know that sounds funny, but it was good. It was good.
Well, I don't think anyone would even bother to argue with that. But
it's single player. It kicks Mario Kart 64's ass.
This is Rare and their absolute peak. I don't really know what happened to them since.
Microsoft happens to them.
But I think they're already on the downward spiral.
I guess.
They were. You look at Star Fox Adventures, and it's it's good, but it's not the best.
It was Star Fox meets Zelda. It was a bit weird.
It was very it was definitely wasn't of the quality that you were used to.
Sure.
So, but that's a bit later on.
Anyway, to go into Sega a bit more as well.
I just have a tiny bit more to say on the N64.
Of course, by all means.
I think the main strength is the first party and Rare. The thing that lets them down, I think, is perhaps that the third party, there wasn't a lot going on there.
I agree. But but the thing is, with Sega and Nintendo at this point, it was more of a quality rather than quantity.
Yeah.
PlayStation had the quantity.
I think Sega also, not as much as Nintendo, but they also didn't have as much third-party support as, say, the PlayStation did, but they did have an amount.
They kind of shared it up until a point.
People still release games like Tomb Raider, like Resident Evil, the big names tended to be on the Saturn, albeit generally inferior versions. When you talk about the Saturn and you talk about Sega, you're talking about hardware that was flawed in its conception.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love
very hard for people to program for, and they alienated a lot of game companies, and I think not game companies, but they alienated Walmart. That was the big thing they did that fucked them up.
Oh, in the States, definitely.
And Walmart is just all powerful, super evil being. So they have all this control, and by releasing the console early, but not in Walmart, Walmart wouldn't even stock Dreamcasts. That's how pissed off they were. So
Jesus, they held a grudge.
Oh yeah, well, Walmart are like probably top 5 evil things that ever existed. But
they're up there with Hitler.
they're up there with Hitler. Yeah.
I'll tell you what though. I know this is a bit off topic on that, but I know you're going to disagree with me on this. I thought the Saturn pad was awesome, but this was stepping into a 3D games market.
Yeah.
And you needed an analog, to be fair.
Well, the PlayStation didn't have an analog, I think, and Nintendo were the only ones that really thought of that. The PlayStation got there later, and I think Sega did as well. I don't think the design was perfect, but like...
Oh, it was the prototype to a Dreamcast pad almost.
It was perfect for nights.
Yeah.
I'll give it that.
Yeah.
So I don't... It's not something... Yeah, I can see, like, it's a cool controller and it's very light and comfortable in your hands, but it's definitely a controller that feels like it's more suited to a 2D gaming.
But that's another weird thing. The N64 controller is Marmite. You love it or hate it.
Yeah.
I love the N64.
I kind of love it for the quirkiness of it, but it's definitely not the most comfortable... It was a strange design.
And let me tell you something. When you've got an N64 sitting in your living room, and you've got 4 different coloured pads all plugged in, there's something nice to look at about that. Presentable. It's just fun, you know.
But we talked about like the games that on Nintendo, and like the thing that the Saturn had was again awesome arcade conversions, and they're just. Daytona. Some games that just like they had that strength of Virtua Fighter. I think was definitely the hot property at the time, especially like in Japan. It was a big
and
deal.
That's what
like,
Nintendo
really
lacked at the time. With the
fighters. They had Smash Bros, but that was really it. I really don't count Killer Instinct because I think Killer Instinct was intensely overrated.
I think Killer Instinct was just a shot at doing their own Mortal Kombat type game.
Esque, I guess, but like. Then, I mean, I guess we'll talk about it more in the top 5 game bit, but like the Saturn had...
Well, they had Mortal Kombat 4, I guess, but that's like one you're not keen on personally.
No, but they had Virtua Fighter Plus because the Saturn had such awesome 2D processing power. It had the best Street Fighter. Like the Alpha 2 was the best version of the Saturn.
Street Fighter versus X-Men was
and that as well. Marvel versus Capcom. It had for 2D fighters. Like a Saturn is your console. Like that's what you want.
That's just the thing. But
and for 2D games in general, also they had Treasure support, which was awesome at the time.
But the problem with Sega, with the idea of having great 2D games is, at the time, 3D was the range. You didn't care about 2D anymore.
I totally agree, and maybe they were a bit conservative and they didn't know, were unsure if 3D would take off. But I'm talking about purely which console I prefer, and I don't really give a shit if it's 2D or 3D. And I think maybe 2D games, like not in Nintendo's case, but generally sometimes 2D games age better than those early 3D games for sure.
Oh yeah, no, so, I think Sega really missed the boat as well when it came to the Saturn. You see the Saturn, the first thing you see is Saturn.
Yeah.
My God, it's got a CD, but it's also got a cartridge slot. I can't wait to put my Mega Drive games in this.
Backwards compatibility would have been a big deal.
And it's the same.
That could have been a game changer.
Yeah,
and I really think. But I guess it was too difficult to do because otherwise Nintendo probably would have tried it as well.
But it's such kind of trickery on the eyes when you see that cartridge.
It looks like a child. Yeah. It looks like it would.
Exactly. No. Yeah. When I was a kid, I was taken to like a Curry's or something like that, and they had a Saturn on display, and they had Sonic Jam inside it, and I noticed there was a cartridge in it.
Yeah, so you just thought
it was Sonic. And I thought, my God, this plays the Mega Drive games. And it almost made me get a Saturn, which would have been, in my opinion, a big mistake, just because of the longevity of a Saturn at the time.
Yeah, probably the wrong console to have at the time as a child, but...
As I was kind of saying, the ports and the cartridges kind of thing... I'm so glad N64 held on to cartridge. You know? It was the last console to do cartridge. Last kind of modern.
At the time, it seemed like a flaw, but like as a going back kind of thing, I think it's cool to see.
The weird thing about the N64 though was I never thought the graphics were amazing when you first saw it, but I never thought they evolved. You know? It's quite weird.
It never the graphics look cool, but like the fact. Like as a kid, you think 64-bit it's gonna be twice as powerful as the PlayStation. It doesn't.
Definitely looks better,
but then I think that later PlayStation games, like you look at something like say Final Fantasy 9, and this might sound controversial, but in terms of graphics, I think that game looks better than anything. No, just the actual graphics of the game, like Final Fantasy 9 looks better than anything on the N64, just in terms of detail.
Saying that, play Banjo-Kazooie again. That game looks...
No, I know really they look good, but I think those later PlayStation games, like, I think people really learnt on the tech, and like you said, the N64 games, there didn't seem to be a whole lot of evolution in
or even Zelda. Zelda, or Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
That game looks stunning to this day.
And
Majora's Mask, the next
one of the things the Saturn...
Obviously, Perfect Dark.
Yeah.
GoldenEye. Well, GoldenEye not so much, but Perfect Dark, that expansion pack. It was.
One of the things the Saturn, I guess, lacked was like 3D graphical power.
Also, now, with the Saturn though, they did have the best conversions of Duke Nukem, I believe.
I think, like, yeah, that's why
would
games
be
like
N64,
Doom and Duke Nukem,
but
like,
with the N64, it had cooperative mode, which was awesome.
I really don't
they
like
got rid of
those.
the music. That's the thing.
I really don't like those N64 versions because they kind of changed them up and changed the level design and made them have these 3D graphics, which I didn't like as much.
What Doom was like a whole new game for the N64.
Well, so is Duke Nukem, I think.
No, Duke Nukem was the same, but they got rid of the music for some weird reason. I don't know why, but they made it
probably couldn't fit it on a cart, I would guess.
They could have just looped something out.
Yeah.
Anyway,
similar.
it's the best. Well, depending. If you want a cooperative Duke Nukem, it's the best. If you just want to play it single player with the music and all that, then you go for the PlayStation or Saturn, I guess. But for races, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Depends
what you prefer, I guess.
I think for a multiplayer racer, probably go for the N64 experience.
N64, I think, is the multiplayer machine.
Single Saturn.
Yeah.
The arcade conversions, the Daytona, the
Smax TT,
Sega Rally,
Sega Touring Car, just a
I love the way.
time.
I mean, for me, it even like outdoes the PlayStation. I know this is going to be weird, like the Saturn in sound.
Yeah.
That sound quality.
Because it's Sega sort of sound.
Yeah.
Is amazing. Always soundtracks are so good, and it's something. Yeah, I guess like Sony was kind of heading towards that more kind of not movie-esque, but like a soundtracky thing rather than a game music-y thing, which I think is a bad explanation, but that's kind of how I think Sega have it down as like this style which is very strange to have a kind of company that has a whole company that's a style of music. I mean, Nintendo have it as well with Contra Coda, I think, or however you say it. But Sega number one in sound in terms of gaming, as far as I'm concerned.
We've gone over graphics and sound on the consoles. Now let's jump right into the games.
Let's go into our.
Well, we always
lists.
say Nintendo first and Sega.
Yeah.
We might as well not break this.
So,
Nintendo was the firstborn of the two, I guess. So it makes sense.
So Nintendo, do you want to lead this time?
Well, I've got N64 and plenty of games for it, so
yeah,
I can definitely say Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
Definitely say Ocarina of Time. That was probably the best seller game. That or Link's Awakening on the Game Boy. I know that's a weird other one, but
I think like everyone knows it revolutionised that sort of style of RPG in 3D. It's just a perfect game, really. Apart from the water temple.
And Link is like the Clint Eastwood of games, where he's the silent kind of hero.
Yeah.
You can give him your own
personality. But he doesn't look as badass. He looks a bit more like a easily kind of character. But yes, I see.
If you see what I mean, like give him your own name and you play as him, and it doesn't really matter.
Number two,
I guess Mario 64. I just have those nostalgic memories, swinging Bowser by the tail, and those great power-ups. I know the DS version had more stuff going for it, but that N64 version with the pad, it was just so much more fun. So yeah,
classic game.
It was amazing. The soundtrack was awesome. Everything was just kick-ass. And when the game first starts and he jumps out the little pipe and you're ready, you get the letter from Peach, you're right in.
Yeah.
It's like an old school...
It's the way it should be for me.
Exactly.
Straight in with the game.
And Mario never stopped doing that, really. It was always straight in with the game. You get a little cutscene or whatever, then it's the game until the end. Which, Sonic's a bit different in the sense that...
Sonic's always been more story-based, though, I feel, even in the older ones,
But now they've gone to a Nintendo kind of way of doing Sonic, which is good, I think.
Well, I think this might have been a one-off kind of thing because it was on a Nintendo console with Lost World as an exclusive.
That's very possible. I mean,
still
Generations, though,
still have
kind of like a Nintendo-ish kind of thing of the simplicity but fun. And graphically it looks stunning. But anyway, that's another
moving on.
Time. Star Fox 64. I can play that so many times, the Light Out Wars as it's called down here. It's just a classic. It's just a
good on-rail shooter.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many different... It's like Outrun in the sense that you can take different routes, different levels depending on your performance.
Totally.
You've got your comrades flying up with you, protecting them.
Doing a barrel roll.
Yeah, it's the best flight shooter game there is, in my opinion. The next game, Smash Brothers. That Smash Brothers game, what can you say? Probably N64 is... I can list so many games, but I can't. I'm not supposed to.
Smash Bros is awesome.
I want to give a few honourable mentions. I'm not going to tell you why, I'm just going to say some names after. But yeah, the Smash Brothers, of course. So how many is that? 3?
4.
4. Shit.
One more, man.
Well, I have to choose a karting game. It has to be a karting game. That's what it's all about.
One. It's got to be Mario, surely? Or Diddy Kong for single player, because that's the
Or Mickey, or a combination of the two. That was a rare game as well. But Mickey had too much of a catch-up mode going on for it, so I'm going to give that a skip. Mario Kart and the other Diddy Kong did to a little degree, but not as extreme.
But yeah.
Oh, God. If I'm playing single-player Diddy, if I'm playing multiplayer Mario Kart...
we'll call it a tie.
A tie.
A tie.
Exactly, and...
Just throw out the list then, very quickly.
Of course.
Honorable mentions.
Of course. Banjo-Kazooie, Donkey Kong 64, Mario Party... You know, the standards.
Yeah.
Every Nintendo exclusive was good on the N64.
Yeah, totally. What's my favourite era? My top 5 is
F-Zero X as well. There's so many of them. So
my top 5 is actually very similar, so I won't need to do too much explaining.
Alright.
Mario 64, Legend of Zelda.
Mario 64 took a while to grow on you as well. You weren't keen.
But it's because I never really played it that much until
the DS version with the D-pad. And
I didn't have an N64 when it was new, but for exactly the same reasons. I would say Banjo-Kazooie is in there because I actually prefer it to Mario 64. I never played Banjo-Tooie, so I don't know on that front, but...
It's apparently better. I've never played it.
But Banjo-Kazooie is it's awesome. It's just so fun. I love the style and the music, and I love the kind of open-ended nature of it because it's a collecting rather than a getting from A to B type thing. I like that about it a lot. Mario Kart as well. It's just an amazing multiplayer. I love Mario Kart, old Mario Kart. It's just... as good a multiplayer time as you can have.
In your opinion, the last of its kind when it comes to Mario Kart as well, wasn't it? I mean,
the last good console one for me.
I personally love Double Dash, but that's fair that you like that one. But
yeah, and then number 5, it's quite tricky, I guess. But
have you seen Zelda?
I've seen Zelda, yeah. I'm going to say GoldenEye. Awesome multiplayer.
I mentioned after you did
a good single player, but just such good multiplayer. I mean, Perfect Dark is perhaps a better game.
But it's not James Bond.
Yeah, I don't have as many memories. Honorable mentions wise, since we're doing this now, I just want to say very quickly, wrestling games on the N64, best wrestling games ever made. They
No
never got any better. That's all I really want to say. They're simple, not overly complicated, arcadey.
Well, let's put the pinpoint. It's the THQ ones.
Oh yeah,
the acclaim ones sucked.
There aren't any other ones on the N64.
Oh, there's ECW, there's WWF Attitude, and
I suppose. Oh,
the THQ made them. But the thing is,
the N64 exclusives.
There's no beating, no mercy with all the creative characters of all your friends and doing a Royal Rumble, throwing them all in there. What we need to do at some point is getting like names in a hat and getting the 4 pads, and when your name comes up on the screen, you jump in and grab a pad with everyone there. That would be amazing. But
anyway, honourable mentions should be quick, so let's be quick.
Okay, I'm going to jump in and say one. I know this is bad, but Conker really revolutionised Nintendo. They finally said, "Fuck it, let's make an adult game." And just got to say, at last, hats off to them for that. But carry on.
It's not my favourite Nintendo game, but it's I guess honourable for that reason.
A good fun game.
And just Paper Mario because it's I like that game. It's simple and easy, but it's cool. It's fun. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah.
Game's making more noise.
All right. So on to the Saturn then. Top 5. I mean, this is a tricky one for me because there's a lot. Daytona,
definitely Daytona's.
Yeah, I always found the Daytona conversions on the Saturn, I don't know if they're the best for the time, but compared to the arcade, they're a little bit loose in the control department. The HD version on the online now is much better.
I know,
but still for the time.
It's Daytona. This was the only way you can play Daytona at home.
Yeah.
You know, it's damn cool. I guess for another one, I'm gonna say a few games that are also on the PlayStation here because Saturn and PlayStation, they're only shared games.
Yeah.
Probably go for Marvel vs. Capcom.
Best version of the game, like we mentioned.
Exactly, and it's just good fun. You know, I love Spider-Man versus Ryu, stuff like that. Stuff like it's the first crossover game.
It's a crazy fighter. You don't really have to be that good just to enjoy the wackiness of it.
Oh yeah, and it's got such a great roster, such a great character roster.
Totally.
So that's probably the second one I'll throw in there. There's something about the Pandemonium on the Saturn that's damn fun.
It's just weird, maybe because Knights is on it as well, so they're a good team.
No, you said Knight. no. I haven't played Knights that much, so I'm going to have to say Pandemonium. But I do like Knights.
Gives me more to talk about.
Exactly.
I'm going to say Knights.
One game I've always wanted to play on the Saturn. I'm actually going to mention that after the top 5.
Okay.
But I think you might know what I'm going to say there.
Mm-hmm.
God, this is tricky. This is very tricky. Alien Trilogy.
Yeah, great
I
game.
really like
Another
N
one
Trilogy.
that's a multi-platform game, probably better on the Saturn because of its kind of 2D, 3D engine, or not engine, but the fact that it had the two sort of processors. I don't know the right terminology.
Yeah,
but it basically, it's a good version on the Saturn.
I mean, it feels weird to play with a Saturn pad because it's like playing it with a Mega Drive pad.
It's weird that you would choose it over Doom and Duke Nukem and Quake, but I like it a lot as
yeah,
well.
no, for some reason those other games I prefer on other consoles than the Saturn. I don't know why, but Alien Trilogy seems to just
Alien
work.
Trilogy, I think I remember as a console game for some reason. Maybe because it's the name I've experienced it, whereas the others I think of PC.
Yeah, well, for me, it's Duke Nukem on the PlayStation.
Really?
Yeah, I quite like. It's the pad. It's the
yeah.
pad. I like playing with that pad.
That's fair. So you got one more.
I know this is going to sound really weird, and you're probably going to think there's so many better games than that. Why are you going for that?
Yeah.
But WWF in Your House. That was such a wacky arcade conversion.
Crazy, yeah.
When arms turn into big sledgehammers and stuff like that, it was just weird and
It was
fun
a good
and
time
wacky
for
and-
wrestling.
Oh yeah, it wasn't THQ who made that one, but it wasn't simulation. It was just a nice arcade.
Definitely
port.
an
It was
arcade game.
Good fun. I
And
thought
like
that was good fun.
arcade on the Saturn is like the way, that's kind of. I mean, it's not going to be what my list is composed of necessarily,
I'll
but
tell you what,
it's the right
if
marriage.
I find that, because I've still got the game somewhere, if I find it, I'll bring it down here and you can have it, because that's a great game. You would enjoy it in your collection. But anyway, moving on to you.
You're not going to do a little honour? I thought you
The
had
one
one you
game
wanted to mention.
there's one game I really wanted to play on the Sam, which you'll probably never get, unless you
I-
pay a lot of money.
Yeah, I am going to one
There
day.
is a Shinobi game.
Oh, you
on
mean
Saturn.
Shinobi Legions or Shinobi X, depending
I
on the
think
region?
it's Shinobi X is what it's called.
Well, it's called both.
It
It
looks
depends
so
on the
good. It
region.
looks so good.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say Panzer Dragoon Saga, which
I
is
don't
an
know
even more expensive game
Yeah,
that
I
I've never played.
don't know much
and
about that,
apparently
to be
is
fair.
like one of the best RPGs ever made.
And it's sad because that game can never be re-released in HD. If you want to explain why, or put on the console.
Well, the problem is apparently they've lost the source code, so I'm sure they could do a digital version via an emulator, but that'd be obviously you wouldn't be able to do a full HD. I guess.
I'll tell you, one game that would have really helped the Saturn, maybe give it more life, would have been Shenmue if it was actually completed and made on that Saturn. Because
Yeah,
I saw the
maybe.
demo videos and stuff, and it looked
But
phenomenal for a
it
Saturn.
looks even better on the Dreamcast. But we'll get to that.
Oh, it does, but actually no, I think it stretches the Saturn's power more than it.
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's so hard to say. They
We'll
both
get
stretch
around.
each console so well.
So anyway, my 5, Panzer Dragoon. I never played Saga. I've only sort of played Zwei, but the first Panzer Dragoon, I actually have more memory. I had it on the PC, like one of those explosive games.
Yeah.
That's the first time I owned it, but as a Saturn game like that. Panzer Dragoon is just it's one of my favourite franchises, even if I've only played that and Auto really. But I still think it's awesome, and it paved the way for so many awesome games as well, like Rez, Child of Eden. It's a fucking good game.
Yeah.
It's not a lot. It's just a good on-rail shooter with a unique art style.
It
and
never
unique
really appealed to a Western
music.
market, but the Japanese market loved it apparently. It was a big seller up there.
It's just a quality game. I said I was going to say Knights, so I'm going to say Knights. Utterly unique game. There's nothing else like it. It's sort of a mix between a racer and a platformer, but without any platforming.
But it's the Saturn Sonic. Saturn never really had its own Sonic.
guess,
They
like,
needed a
if you-
platformer hero, and it's probably Knights.
Yeah,
That's
if you were
what
going to
people
say
think
anything, it would be that. But it's just so cool. The music is great, and the way it feels to play it is something that's there's not another game that creates the feeling that it feels like to play Knights. Even the modern Knights was legit. The one on the Wii that was pretty sucky, but
Yeah.
the old Knights is proper top notch. So moving on from that. We put Fighters Megamix. Up until now, I would have
That was
said
a good
Virtua
game.
Fighter 2, but having recently played a bit more Fighters Megamix.
See, I would
such a good
say
game.
Last Bronx instead of that as a favourite.
Yeah, Last Bronx was a kind of a lesser known, but really, I really like that. This
So
is a great
fast,
time
so
for
quick,
fighting
so,
games
yeah.
as
They're
well.
all good. I can't think of a bad
Sega
Saturn
in their
fighting game.
arcade prime at this point, I would say, with the 3D era.
Oh, yeah.
Just love that. It's this great mishmash and actually a really good balance, and even a couple of crazy Sonic the Fighters characters in there.
Yeah, you had Bean the bear or whatever it's called. No, Bean the Dynamite, wasn't it?
Bean the Dynamite and Bark the polar bear.
The bear, yeah.
Yeah, I think they were both in that. So
He was such a funny character to play as well when you're fighting a human or something.
yeah, totally. It's such a wacky game.
Yeah.
Sega Rally is my racer of
Classic.
choice.
What a classic.
Such a good version.
In my opinion, Thrasher's Toka touring cars on the PlayStation. You know,
Yeah,
when it came to touring car kind of games, I
it's
just
a rally game.
it's pretty much the same, isn't it?
No, touring cars is a Tarmac.
Oh, is it? Oh,
Yeah.
fair.
But anyway, like
Yeah.
Sega Rally is still as good to play now.
Okay,
for me as
Thrasher's
it
Colin
was then.
McRae Rally. There we go.
Yeah. I'm with you there.
Mm.
Totally awesome game. Not a simulation, but still kind of realistic, but in an arcadey way.
Yeah.
Awesome. Just, like I said, I can always go back and play that game some more, and I never really tire of it. I always look forward to playing the first Sega Rally. The last game,
Bit of magic there.
bit of magic. It gets tricky when you get down to the last one.
I'm
'cause
surprised you
you're
haven't said they're all exclusives. I'm surprised you haven't said something like Resident Evil or something like that thrown in there. But
because I'm thinking about the games to me that I want to play if I want to play my Saturn, these are the games that I want to play.
those kind of third-party games you'd rather play on the PlayStation, or
Not that I'd rather, but like I don't associate them, I guess, with the Saturn.
that's fair enough.
So that, yeah.
I tell you what, Die Hard Trilogy is another one that was damn cool as well.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, Die Hard Arcade was the exclusive on the Saturn.
I've
Apparently,
heard
it's
that's
amazing.
Yeah, I've heard that's even better. But the guy looks nothing like Bruce Willis, which is quite funny.
Probably was never meant to be a Die Hard game.
Yeah, it's possible.
Anyway, just to round it off, very tough decision, but between the two light gun games. But Virtual Cop, I'm going to say, well, Virtual Cop 2 specifically, another one again.
Honorable
I
mention definitely
grew up
goes to House of the Dead.
Yeah, which is, I mean, House of the Dead 2 I prefer to Virtual Cops, but Virtual Cop 2 is my favourite
Oh, no, I prefer
light
Virtual
gun
Cop.
game on the
So
Saturn.
good.
And it's
So good.
such a good game. I'm going to never get bored of playing it. The only problem now is I have a HD TV I can't use a light gun on.
It's a bit sucky.
But, you know, that's
Yeah.
a problem, but that's not a problem with the game. And it's still an awesome game, so
Oh yeah.
that would be my top 5. So,
You're not going to throw any honourable mentions out for the Saturn, or can you not
there's
think
so
of
many.
any?
I think you've got to say all of the treasure games, you know, the scrolling fighters that they did, like kind of, and the shooter like Radiant Silvergun as well, like proper good old school Japanese style hard as fuck games.
Yeah.
All of the races, the good arcade conversions, like Sega Ages is good on it because you get like Afterburner and Outrun. There's a lot.
Here's a funny.
And there's a lot of the cross-platform games like you mentioned as well, like Tomb Raider, like Resident Evil, Gex apparently is, you know. Good.
Well, let's go over Sonic on the Saturn. Sonic 3D
Okay,
just
very
Sonic car.
quickly, yeah. I haven't mentioned the Sonic games because Sonic 3D is okay, but not worthy of a top 5.
It's
Sonic
better than the Mega Drive version, though. You'd rather have that version, wouldn't you?
I guess I don't think the soundtrack is as good personally.
Really? They changed the soundtrack? I didn't know
yeah.
that. But it has the FMV video, at
Yeah,
least.
I guess. But unfortunately it put a stupid Sonic 2-esque special stage in rather than the older one, which I preferred on the Mega Drive.
Fair enough.
But as Sonic R is a kind of, I have fun with it, but it's
It's
not
a gimmick
gonna-
game.
Yeah,
It's just there, you throw it in. But it's a shame that that's the exclusive Sonic game that... It's the exclusive Sonic game that's on the Saturn. It's a shame that's the only one.
Sonic's Jam is probably the best example just because it's a collection of the great games with some cool upgrades, and it's got the Sonic World, which was a sign of things to come.
Yeah.
So to wrap it up on that front, I mean, I think I know what your
Well,
is.
I'll explain why. For me, the Saturn is a very sad story.
Yeah.
It's the Saturn of what could have been. It's the console of what could have been. It had a good start, but that's all it had. The Mega Drive at least had a life, and so did the Master System, and so the Dreamcast to a degree. The Saturn was just about a year or two, and then it was just dead.
Yeah. So you're going to say the N64? I think
Only because...
it's hard to argue, isn't it?
only because the Saturn just never really had lived to its potential, really. And to be fair, the N64 shared those later PlayStation games like Tony Hawk and Resident Evil 2 and stuff like that. And it's sad. It really is sad about the Saturn, but, you know, I have to say N64 for obvious reasons. To me, personally, it's a no-brainer, but I love the Saturn.
To me, this is one that I'm very tempted just to call a tie, even though I said the N64 was Nintendo at its best, and I don't think many people would agree with me in saying that the Saturn was as good, but I'm talking about in terms now, like, I would play both consoles in equal measures, and the Saturn just has these weird and wonderful, unique games that there's not as many of them, and it's definitely a case of quality over quantity in this, like...
Oh yeah,
but
that's the
there
one
are
thing.
there are less games that I would play, but those games I would play more of.
Sure.
But like you can't really argue with the N64's strength. Like So on another day, depending on my mood, like we N64 all the way. But sometimes the Saturn is just like a weird place kind of console.
I think you'll probably have to own an N64 again to say for sure. I think that's probably where you are at the moment. At the moment, it's like the memories are there. But
no, it's not that. I think I can be quite objective on it, and it's just like I said, like it's not.
Like once
it depends if you're talking about history and how things affected games. You say N64 is all the way in terms of influence, but in terms of just my personal preference of what I would play, it's too close to call.
I'm not gonna sway your opinion. I love the Saturn, as I said, but it's just the longevity of the N64. So many more games coming out. It's like the NES and the Master System. It's a similar argument where there was just more going.
So anyway,
but to throw in a quick thing. I know you don't want to do this too often, and you're kind of. But I'm going to just say the PlayStation quickly.
Okay, get out of the way.
What's the middle ground?
Not what it's about.
Yeah, I know. But it was the middle ground, and it was that kind of thing which swayed them both. And consoles kind of followed the PlayStation route afterwards.
Oh, yeah, definitely. PlayStation led the way, but anyway.
To me, it kind of proves like Crash Bandicoot, although it was good in its time, it was never a Mario and Sonic in the long run. It will never live the life those guys led. And it's a shame.
I'll talk about that another time because,
we'll go over a platformers thing sometime, but. Yeah, I just thought I'd bring that because it is a console in the era and it's what beat them both, so you kind of can't ignore it. But
it's not what the video's for, really.
But all I'm gonna say on this is one last thing.
Right.
In this day and age, I'd rather play a Saturn and an N64 over a PlayStation. And back then, with the excitement of the way around, exactly, there was more quantity on a PlayStation, and that would kind of mess around with your mind a bit and make you think, oh, there's so much going on here.
You were younger then as well, so it was more about what marketing kind of sways you to, but PlayStation was the hip thing.
But now it's like, PlayStation was cutting edge, but every new console is cutting edge.
Yeah.
And it's no longer interesting anymore a lot of the time. Whereas N64 and Saturn, let's play to our strengths, and that's what made them great machines. And that's why I bring up PlayStation, just to talk about that. Yeah.
Cool.